Welcome, everyone. Like always, give it a few minutes before we jump into the topic. But if you're here from Instagram, we got some great information that you might want to take notes on, or I guess you can always come back to the live later,
Yeah.
watch the replay. But should be pretty informative today, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole name of the game with Amazon is sourcing. And in order to source, you have to be able to read Keepa charts. And I think just in general, understanding how different people analyze different charts. And, we have some niche stuff and some general stuff. This is just going to be like scratching the surface because there's so much opportunity. If you can master Keepa, you will find success with Amazon. Like that is really the name of the game.
Big time. Yeah, I mean, we'll cover a couple listings, but there's thousands of different variations of what scenarios of charts you can see, and it's gonna change with everything. So if you understand the basics, which we'll try to be, I don't know if we'll keep it too high level. We're gonna probably dive in pretty deep on some of these things, just because I think there's not a lot of that type of content out there. Everyone keeps it high level, it feels, on social media for the clicks and the likes and stuff. But we're gonna break down each product. Well, I guess now we're not announcing the topic, I guess. But so we have for you guys, we have some Keepa charts that we handpicked, and we're gonna kind of do a deep dive on the breakdown of how we look at these products, and then just talk about pros and cons, risk involved with the type of chart. We're just going to look at the chart itself. We're not going to look at any of the profit calculations or anything like that. We're just going to assume that they're all profitable at the current price, and then we're just going to go through the product breakdown and determine if it's a good buy, a risky buy, something that we maybe want to keep track of, right? And do we like these types of products? Is there a way to find more of the products that look like that specific chart? That's the nice thing about Keepa, is it's such a, there's so many things you can do with the tool besides just look at the price history and the chart history. So maybe we'll dive into that a little bit too. But been live for a few minutes. You ready to jump into that first product? I'll let you go first, I guess, and we'll go back and forth from there. If you guys have any questions on our breakdown, definitely drop questions in the chat.
Yeah.
If you have questions about other Amazon stuff, we're always happy to answer those things too. We'll be going back and forth between the chat and sharing our screens and stuff with Keepa. So definitely let us know. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and let's get into it.
Yeah, so I'll kind of preface this chart here. I am specifically focusing on no sales rank items, okay? So I have two charts for you guys. I think we'll probably alternate, but the first one here, what I'm going to do is, let me first explain why no sales rank is valuable. It's because a lot of sellers that aren't experienced can't break down charts. They can't understand them, or they just stay away from them entirely because they have rigid metrics, which when you're brand new, that makes sense, to be honest. But with time, anytime there's an opportunity to have unique Keepa charts, it could lead to a major competitive advantage. And one of those that I really like is items with no current sales rank. So what I'm going to do is show you how to analyze a chart with no sales rank and my exact process, and kind of go from there. So let me take you into the chart here, okay? I'll just walk you through. This isn't necessarily rigid, but my process here. First things first, up here at the top, I'm highlighting it, number of reviews, okay? I don't get too caught up on what the actual rating is, 4.2. In general, I'm always more concerned about just the total number of reviews, unless it's absolutely horrific, like a 1 or something, or a 2 even, that could be a red flag. But I'm concerned with reviews. And the reason for that is because in my mind, I equate one review to every 100 sales. And it might even be more like one review to every 500 sales. But that lets me know on the low end, this has sold at least 1,400 times based on those numbers. Now, that could be right, that could be wrong. I'm not concerned. It's just a good metric that it's moving. Okay. So then when we look at the chart here, the buy box has some good movement here, right? Up and down, up and down. Typically, if something's not selling, you're not going to see so much movement because it's going to be stagnant. People aren't going to be adjusting it that consistently. Then down here, something that I really like is not just the total number of reviews, but is it recently been increasing? Because if all the reviews came 5 years ago, that doesn't really help me with modern day. This is a 3-month snapshot. There was 11 earlier, the 3-month snapshot. It went up to 12 to 13 to 14. So these are recently increasing, which is a great indicator. And even if that isn't 100% accurate, it's progressing in the right direction. So I like that. And then this blue line down here is the seller count. And I like the fact that it's continuously fluctuating. Like here, there was 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. Then there was 4, 3, 2, 3, 2. So constantly moving, consistently moving. And what that tells me is that sellers are selling out of their inventory. Now, seller count you take with a grain of salt because that doesn't tell you how much stock they have. If somebody has 1 versus if somebody has 100, the chart can look very different. But the fact that it is moving means that there has to be sales. So I like that a lot. And what we'll do now is span this out a little bit further. And I'll always show you guys before I do that, just because it doesn't have a sales rank chart, a sales rank now, doesn't mean that it never did. And you can go back in time to get an idea when the sales rank was caught, how did it look? So I start with a year snapshot. And sure enough, as you can see here, up until this time right here, which was beginning of this year, there was a sales rank as low as 10,000, as high as like 30,000, 40,000, like a very, very good sales rank. And from here, you can also see the amount of sellers is always decreasing and fluctuating. It comes in stock, it goes out of stock. The amount of reviews does have some fluctuation. It probably went from like a parent listing to a non-parent listing. But the fact is that recently we saw a nice steady increase there. So sales rank when it was in, it was very good. Seller chart consistently moving, very good. Number of reviews is good. Buy box is moving. And one other thing I like to do is go to data and offers. Okay. And so this helps kind of get a better gauge of how it's moving as well. Not just the amount of sellers, but sometimes you can see how much they've sold. These charts actually in this one don't look, they're not very telling. And this line here, how much they've sold in the last 30 days, I take it with a grain of salt too. So to be honest, I didn't look at this part of it in advance. I would kind of just take this with a grain of salt, not really give it a whole lot of weight. But based on everything else, I'm very confident about this product, and I would certainly buy it, assuming that the buy cost is good. So that's kind of my overview snapshot on a no sales rank item.
So one question I have for you, the up and down price, I guess if you see, movement and let's say you're only profitable at that higher range, you can kind of see like, let's see, mid-January, then early February, then like mid-February, and then now like end of March, early April, that higher price range, maybe closer to $30. Let's say at the lower range, which is $23, you're only making like a 20% ROI. And then once you hit that $30, you're now at 40%. Like, is that still, is there too much risk involved with that type of ratio there, or is it still worth purchasing? I know the offer count's pretty low, so the price maybe is it's justifiable as to why we're able to sell at 30. Because if you look in the past, it doesn't really go above 25 up until that rank goes away. So what's your thought on the risk tolerance of this product here? And I guess maybe that just, you'll still buy it. It's just, you won't buy as many, or you'll test it and then see what happens to the offer count. What's your thought on that?
Yeah. So a couple of things, whether it's no sales rank or not, because there is a decent amount of fluctuation in the buy box. For one, I'd like to weigh if this sells for the lower end of the buy box, what's my worst case scenario, right? Oh, I only make 20% ROI. On a no sales rank item with very few sellers and a decreasing amount of sellers, I think I'm willing to take that chance, assuming this doesn't cost a fortune. And I might not bank it on hitting the high point of the buy box either. Sometimes with no sales rank, I just want to understand, is this thing selling? Is it selling well? Because I know I'm not going to have as much competition on something like this typically. And by the way, the longer there's no sales rank, the less competition in general. But for this, another thing I would do, and I can pull it up here, I would go to data and buy box statistics because it fluctuates. You know, this person has been averaging a $25 buy box, this person a 28, you know, so I'm weighing that into the equation as well, right? And so I'm weighing my worst case being probably the 25 mark, but I really like that we're at a point with the low amount of sellers. I see that the average of those two sellers buy box is probably around 26. Basically, I think that there's minimal risk with some decent upside and the ability to get feedback on this product. So I might not go super deep, and I don't think it's necessarily a home run, but I think I like this enough to buy it because of everything else.
Yep. And one comment, side note on that buy box statistic, like some of you might see that and get scared, but you got to understand that. I mean, I think the chart you were, or the, I guess the frame you were looking at was 30 days. And in the
Right.
last 30 days, there's only been, 2, 3, 4 sellers. So the buy box
Right.
rotation isn't going to rotate between 7, 8, 10 sellers, right? If you go back to 180 days, you're probably going to see a ton of, you see a bunch of other
Yeah.
sellers rotating. So, I think we both can agree that you take each piece of the Keepa data with a grain of salt and you use it as context
Yes.
to make your final decision. You're not basing your decision off of one specific data point or using one data point to fully make or break the product. I mean, sometimes you are. There's definitely some data points that are so glaring that you're like definitely not buying this. But if you see like, oh, there's just not a lot of buy box share, will I get the share? Well, use the context clues of what's happened over the last 30 days, 90 days, and understand that there's probably just not a lot of sellers. If you look even just in the 90-day cycle, there's probably at least 5 to 7 sellers who've gotten the buy box, and you see the offer count going down in some spots, which means those sellers had to have sold out of their stock. It's that, or they put a removal order on their units, which probably didn't happen. So that right there will tell you that those sellers had to get the buy box at some point, and then they sold out.
And what you said, that's exactly what basically every time I'm making a decision, I am just piecing together context clues. All of them weigh differently, on my decision making process, but you're just trying to paint a picture. And let me point one other thing out here, because I know that this took me a while to understand. If you look here, this green line is the seller count, and you see how it's climbing up. And then here, there's like a sharp dip. And then here it went up to 182 and then just fell off to 11.
That's the
Right?
review count, by the way. I think you said seller count, but
Oh, sorry. Yep. Review count. So when that happens, my interpretation or understanding is basically, I think it was part of like a parent listing and now it became its own individual listing. So when that happens, I like to pay attention only after it's been readjusted, kind of like we did in the 3-month. This is, all within the proper time frame. But just so you know, if you see that type of chart, that's what's going on. Don't be like, this is completely, I don't know what's going on. That's probably all it is. So you just want to pick it up on the update.
Yep. Yeah, that's basically what's happening is, probably, I mean, if you think of a variation listing and then a product goes off on its own, it's going to lose all the reviews that all the other variations had combined, because that's where that review count is tallying. So it's just going to show less. But if you see the review count still going up when it's a standalone product, because it's not a variation, you can see there's no variations on this. So if the standalone product's getting reviews, it's all because they are purchasing this specific product. So that's another good context clue to why the no variation selling, or sorry, no sales rank product selling. Anything else on this product, or otherwise I'll jump into my first product. And
should I click stop sharing?
No, I'll just remove. I
Okay,
can just remove you and then throw mine in here. All right. Before we do that, let's just quick We did get one question in the chat. Hey, Stephanie. De La Cruz asked, do you guys avoid clothing listings with certain major sellers? If so, which ones?
Go ahead.
Clothing listings. I don't sell a ton of clothing listings or just brands in general of clothing that one or two major sellers are on. I guess like if you're considering like Adidas clothing with, Amazon being on them, I'll sell certain listings, but it's usually ones that Amazon is not on, or at least not on a majority of the time. I maybe like if you're thinking like Crocs or Asics or Champion, sometimes, Amazon's on those listings. I can't think of too many like clothing brands that have like major sellers dominating, unless it's like a seller that just is very big into the game and they sell a lot of Nike. I mean, you might see some of those, but yeah, man, if the chart looks good and the data is telling you to buy, and it doesn't look like you're going to get IP complaints, if it's a brand you don't recognize, doesn't hurt to test buy. If you're really, feeling like there's a lot of risk involved, buy 2, 3, 5, 7 units and see what happens. I've done that plenty of times where I've been really scared about a listing just based on my analysis, bought a couple units, they all sold, replenned it, and then all of a sudden it turned into a really good product because it is a lesser known brand than, the Nikes, the Adidas out there. So it can be a lot of opportunity. You just got to feel it out, get some real data for yourself and go from there.
Yeah, honestly, I hardly sell any apparel. Anything I do, it would be like something that I think would be a low return opportunity, like not sneakers, for instance, but maybe like socks, for instance. Like, socks are like from shoe size 10 to 13. So like it doesn't have to be a perfect fit, but even then, just generally speaking, I don't have expertise in that category. Just not my thing.
Yep. Stephanie asks, what causes a variation to split off from a paranason?
I don't know.
I honestly don't know either. I think it's random. I think it could be maybe Amazon has some criteria of the description, and if they don't think it fits with the the parent variation, cohesion, I don't know, they remove it. It's happened to me on a couple different listings where it was a decent selling variation and I had a good amount of stock, and then they remove it from the main listing that sells well, and all of a sudden it goes to like a 500K rank, and then you're kind of stuck with inventory. I mean, that's happened before, but yes, kind of is what it is. Doesn't happen too often, but the chart will tell you, give you the clues. So hopefully you are buying after that happens, so you can understand. Because a lot of times you will see really low rank, it goes by on its own standalone listing, the rank shoots up, but it does level out at some point. Once you understand that point, that'll help you determine how many you should buy now that it's on its own. But let's now I'll share my screen here. All right, so this one specifically is going to be more of an overall product breakdown. So I'll talk about the product, maybe some pros and cons, of the chart, obviously, and do my breakdown there. But we'll talk about the product itself too, because it's there's some risk involved here. So want to make sure that we're understanding of everything, because sometimes the data alone, even if it's decent, isn't enough for me to want to purchase, because there are certain things that are just harder to deal with, whether it's prep, whether it's bundles, a bunch of different things that factor into buying. So first thing I'm seeing is that the price is fairly consistent. We're looking at the 3-month chart here. Basically, the low price here is $36.50. We're kind of at that low $37, and we're going to assume that we're making like a 40% ROI at this price here. And this is actually a lead that my VA found me at a profitable price, but I rejected the lead. I'll start with that, but we'll break down everything of why I thought about purchasing it, and then I'll wrap up with why I didn't. But again, we see that price is pretty consistent. I mean, the offer count has only gone up from, say, like 2 or 3 up to 8 over almost a 3-month span. So it really hasn't, there's no major spikes here. We're not seeing huge swings in the offer count. And then we, consequently, we don't see a bunch of huge swings in the price, which is what we like to see. That's kind of a nice steady product. We see a slow increase, but nothing major that's going to cause this thing to go from 37 down to 33 in a matter of weeks, right? So the rank itself, not amazing for grocery. I think this is a grocery. Yep, grocery. It sells a little bit slow. We're looking at, somewhere right around that 50K over the last 90 days. Maybe it's like decreasing slightly as of recent. So, it's going to sell decent amount, but, depending on how many sellers, it's not going to sell a crazy amount. We do see that offer or the review count, going up pretty consistently, which is a great sign. I mean, we've gotten 10, 11 ratings, reviews in the last 90 days, which is awesome. And then just being a grocery item in general, it's you're not going to get returns on this. So that's another bonus to a product like this. We'll look at the data offers. And let's see. Yeah, so again, kind of my thought process on this, what Jonathan kind of mentioned, and I'll reiterate, we don't really love taking one specific data point and using that as, the make or break decision. Sometimes that's the case, right? Like if you see the offer count screaming up in the upwards direction, that's clearly a make or break data point. But if you see 1,000 in stock, right, screams red flag. But are we really, we need to understand, does somebody actually have 1,000 in stock, or does this listing actually have 1,000 in stock? Because if it's a 50K in grocery, maybe it only sells 50 times a month, let's say. But if there's 1,000 in stock, I mean, that's going to take over a year to sell everything. So wouldn't that be enough to say, oh, we don't want to purchase this listing? But when we actually look at the data, we can see this seller here has 1,000 plus, and it looks like they don't have any stock movement, and they're also a merchant fulfilled seller. So the thing about merchant fulfilled sellers is they can manipulate their stock count to whatever number they want. They could keep a stock of 1,000, they can keep a stock of 1 at all times, and when things sell, or if they change their stock from say 10 to 20 or back down to 10, people will take that as 10 sales, right? So it thinks it had 10 in stock, went up to 20, and then back down to 10. So they think, oh, they sold 10 of this item. That's how Keepa, reads that movement. So Keepa, like I said, it takes things pretty literal. So if you see spikes like this, where it goes up from 4 back down to 1, right? That could be an FC transfer spike where it was checked in for a second and then they, went out of stock because it had to transfer to a different FC, and then, came back in stock up here maybe. So, but it's counting that as went from 4 stock down to 1. So that was 3 sales. So, we really want to make sure that like this number, does it seem accurate? It doesn't have to be perfect, right? We don't have to say, okay, it sells exactly 45 times. But what I'm looking for is stock history charts that move in ways that look consistent of actual sales. And FBA sellers are going to be the most true. Some FBM sellers will have stock counts that, you can see a steady decline, and it's going to tell you, okay, probably sold 1 this day, then 2 the next day, then 2 the next day. But stuff like this, we see this like weird spike here up from 3 to back down to 1, 10 to 9. Maybe that's like, I would consider a sale potentially, but it says they sold 4 of them. Same with this seller. I mean, they've been at 6 stock, but it's dips way down. To me, it's like, is that actually sales, or are they manipulating their stock counts so they actually sell 7? So just something to, consider when understanding, like, how many does this sell? How many should I be buying? And the stock counts, right? That's going to be just completely random. It's not always going to be accurate. But I like to, again, just take things with a grain of salt. 1,000 stock. This seller doesn't have 1,000 in stock. If they did, it doesn't look like they're getting too many sales, depending on what they're priced at. Yeah, they're at $41.99 when, we saw clearly that the actual price is probably closer to 37 right now. Even the highest, FBM sellers are at 38. So that 41 price seller, maybe they were selling a little bit, way back, but do they actually have 1,000 in stock? Probably not. So, all this information is just helping us paint the picture of how many times does it sell? How many should we be buying? Is there too much stock on the listing currently? To me, it doesn't look like any one seller, even FBA, 4 in stock, 3 in stock, but they have sold some, potentially, right? So it's like, okay, they're selling, but they don't have a ton of stock. So, all that's good information to understand. Now to go about the actual product here, you can see it's 3 glass jars. So one, it's a multi-pack. So if you're sending this to a prep center, right, you're going to have to, have it bundled in bubble wrap. Obviously it's glass, and then it's also bundle fee. my prep center charges fragile item fee, and they also charge a bundle fee. So for me, it's like, am I actually profitable, right? When you do the math and then with all the placement fees and everything, like this product might not actually be as profitable as I think, even though it doesn't get returns, right? It's a grocery item. But just understanding the extra fees involved with my prep center was enough for me to say, it's not even worth purchasing this. And for some of you, if you're prepping yourself and you have the bubble wrap available and everything, maybe it is worth it. But again, you just really want to understand those numbers before making the decision. The chart itself, if we're just strictly going off the chart, I'm liking what I'm seeing. We see kind of, like I said, in the last like 2-3 weeks, we see a slight downtrend in the sales rank. So maybe this thing is picking up velocity a little bit. The price is fairly consistent over time, right? That's what we like to see. We don't see any major spikes in the offer count. We can go back further to see if there's any other trends. Yeah, we got to go back, almost a year basically to the month when we see huge spikes in this, and we see that decreasing price a little bit. But the rank is also, right around where we were at before. So all that to say, I think this information is slightly irrelevant, but what I do like that we're seeing here is that steady incline in the review count. That's what I like to see on the zoomed out chart. The zoomed in chart, I think we're going to find a little bit more value in based on like recent price history. Jonathan, any comments on that or anything you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think this is a good example of products that like there's more to it, as Alex was talking about, than just the numbers. Like on the initial numbers, glass, bulky, prepping and packing, right? It's a steady price item. This is something I would, anytime you have a steady, real nice steady price like this, I like to save this, because basically it just comes down to, can I one day get this at a drastically reduced price? Because then it could probably make it worthwhile. I will say one thing I don't love, it's not a huge thing, and this is a good example of zoning in versus zoning out. Even though it's not drastic, over the last 3 months, it's been creeping up in seller count pretty consistently. So even though it doesn't drive down the price too hard, I don't believe the price is going to go up, right? Because you're always projecting into the future a little.
Yep.
And then the other thing I was going to say, go back to the all-time for me, or whatever you just looked at, the year.
Yep.
Something I like to do just for peace of mind. If you go to the peak of the seller count all the way back, what did it sell for there?
30, 29, 29.50 at the low.
So I just like to play a game with myself sometimes. For one, things are more expensive now than they used to be. But even then, to me, my absolute worst case scenario is it sells for $30. And I don't ever think that's going to happen. But if you're on the fence and $30 doesn't crush you, that would push me over the edge, knowing that's the safety net, because I have good reason to believe it's not going to ever sell for less than that ever again. And so yeah, that's kind of the only thing I wanted to add there.
Yep. And these prices here, I mean, we see it as low as like, $23, but it looks like there's some sort of price tanking going on from sellers that are trying to remove their stock. And you see these like sharp drop-offs, right? Like sellers are clearly trying to get rid of their stock. So it's like artificially deflated basically. So that's kind of how I'm looking at that. Because then you see, right, the offer count, obviously here, the offer count's really low, so anybody can sell, but it's kind of like a price reset. And one thing I am noticing here too is you don't see a drastic decrease in the sales rank when that price goes way down. So that's basically telling me that, the market doesn't really care if this is priced at 37, doesn't care if it's priced at 25. Like they're going to buy it as consistently as they have been buying it. So that's a good sign for us, right? That we're not going to see, like here, obviously, like they're not willing to pay $42 for 3 jars of peanut butter.
The demand is only so much.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's it. Just basically, sometimes if something isn't that high of demand or they have plenty of other options, it doesn't matter if you drop the price. It doesn't drastically increase the sales velocity and the sales. And that's why you want to make good buys, because sometimes you're stuck with it regardless, not in this case necessarily, but just in general.
Well, yeah. And not to, we'll move on to the next product pretty soon here, but if you bought this at $29.86, hoping to sell and you're only profitable, or like you said, maybe down a couple dollars, and it goes all the way down to 23. Well, next time it gets up to 29.86 is, basically here. So that is, mid-July all the way till November. So you got to wait months and months. So, you almost, at this point, unless you're waiting till there's just no sellers in the listing, you are going to have to sell at whatever the market's, telling you to sell it at. So yeah, it's just like the demand the demand doesn't seem to change based on price. So, that should definitely dictate, like, or help you understand, yeah, it's going to sell at this higher price. There is a cap usually, like we said, a cap on the demand, or on I guess the demand, but that's kind of what we're seeing.
One last thing I will say, and I know you touched upon it, but it's actually a really solid increase in review count, like very steady and very consistent. It might sell better than we actually think, maybe. And that kind of gives me reason to think that, combined with a really good sales rank. But you just never know. I mean, because if that's accurate, that's a lot of reviews in a short period of time.
Yep. And let's see. I mean, there's one seller, two sellers listed like at a competitive price. Like 41 is not going to sell. 39 is probably not going to sell. 39, 38.99. I mean, these 4 or 5 sellers probably aren't going to get a ton of sales unless the offer count drops again. So yeah, I mean, you could sell 15, 20, 25 of these in a month if you're consistently in stock, you're getting the buy box, and you're priced competitively. I mean, that's definitely could happen. So
cool.
Anyway, let's get back to another product here. But Jonathan, I will. You ready for your next product?
Yep.
Our mom appreciate the weekly hashtag wealth.
Consistent, my man.
All right, we got our next Keepa chart. We're each doing 2 products here. So again, if you guys got questions while we're breaking it down, or just questions about other Amazon things, maybe we'll do a tiny bit of Q&A at the very end to answer any other questions. But yeah, let's get to the next product.
All right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take you guys into Keepa Product Finder. Now, for if you're not familiar with this, to me, this is like my favorite way to source in general. But since I'm sticking to the no sales rank, I'm going to show you some simplified ways to filter out sales rank. And there's a lot of more nuance you can go, but just on a basic level. And I will say there's a lot of lines. Don't get overwhelmed. A lot of them you don't have to use. So the very first line, sales rank, we want to check no sales rank. Okay. Now, what I like to do here is for the 100-day average, not always, but for today, I want to show you, I'm just going to put 1. And the reason for that is basically what that'll do is say that within the last 180 days, there's an average, at least there was a registered average. Okay. If I don't have that selected, it could pick up products that haven't had a sales rank in years. That's not a bad thing. But for somebody new to this, I think it's nice being able to look at something that's more relatively new, no sales rank, than having to go way back in time. And that's why I put that 1 there. Okay.
Nice.
And then there's a bunch of other filters you can do. I'll put Amazon out of stock just so we're not selling against them. And then whenever I'm doing Keepa Product Finder, I like to narrow it down to a brand just to give me a reasonable amount. Right now we have 32 million down here products if I hit find products. So what we'll do is Starbucks. I just think that's always an easy generic one. That brings us down to 539. Okay. Now, something else I like to do to bring down that number to a more manageable size is go to review count currently, and let's say from 10. Okay. And that'll bring us down to 212. Now, a more advanced thing you can do is get into this at another point in time. We started getting into negative numbers and stuff. I don't want to do that. But in this column, you can actually tinker it so that the review count has been trending upwards, confirming that it's selling even with no sales rank. But again, that's a little more advanced. So here,
one thing to mention, it is crazy. There's 32 million products on Amazon that Amazon does not sell, but currently has no sales rank. Now, a lot of
Yeah.
those, like you said, they had a sales rank at one point. So if you remove that one, it was probably way more products. So
Oh
there's so
yeah.
much opportunity of people that are probably skipping these listings because they just don't understand them, or they say, "Oh, no sales rank probably doesn't sell," when it's probably
Yeah.
not true.
And so here before I click on anything, some of them have their sales rank average right here. So this is a good example, 158,000 90-day average, but currently no sales rank. Also the eye test, I like seeing that they have review counts, right? So actually this very first one looks like a good one to click on just to understand. So as you can see, the sales rank stopped right here where my cursor is, and then it just continued. Now, I'm not saying, by the way, all of these are winners, not by any means, but there could be a lot of opportunity here. This is a product that looks like it had a big gap of people out of stock. Sales rank fell off. I'd I would probably just exit out, try to get a different one here.
Do you think putting a upper cap on that 180-day sales rank average would give you maybe some historically faster
Yeah,
moving
I've
products?
I've absolutely done that too, and something we'll go back there. Um, we can cap it at like we'll just say I don't know 75,000. Okay, so the highest the sales rank's ever been on average of these products in 180 days, and that brings us down to 94 products. So that's a good idea
Pretty
right there.
specific. Yep. Yep.
Um, and then so we'll just go here. Okay, so here's a product that actually is like a double whammy. Not only did the sales rank stop right here and then people continued to sell it, it's also now out of stock. So to be very honest with you guys, my first reaction is this is probably even worth something looking into, to be honest with you. But so if I'm looking at this, I'm saying, okay, once again, over 5,000 reviews. Now, yes, this is part of a variation. Okay. Um, and by the way, so I'll show you something after this, but I like that the seller count's been consistently down. I like that the review count's consistently up. Sales rank here was 20,000 up to 50,000. Okay. It lost sales rank here as well, but you see this huge decrease in sellers. That tells me it's been selling. It's Starbucks, etc. Not the easiest chart to read if you're new, but again, we're painting a picture here. It's Starbucks. When it's in stock, it's got a good amount of fluctuation on the seller count. The buy box is consistent yet moving. Sales rank is good. And by the way, if you don't understand variations, we'll take it one step further. We'll go back one more time, and this will really narrow us down. I just have to find where it is. You can actually select if you want them to be part of a variation or not. If I can find it. There we go, right here. No variations. Okay, so that brought us down to 15. Now, sometimes I like variations, sometimes I don't. Again, conversation for another day. You can do so much with Keepa Product Finder. So here's one. This is also out of stock. You'd have to go way back in time.
Yeah. Could be a season. A lot of these might be seasonal items too that
Yeah.
only were available in stores at certain times. But yeah, depending on the brand.
But and this will be the last one I'll show you guys, but just to get the gist, again, had a sales rank, now it doesn't. So we have to look at other context clues. Number of reviews up here. Is the seller count going down or moving? What's the recent review count doing? Again, here's a big drop off. So I'm curious. Here there was 75. Is there any more? No. Okay. This probably used to be part of a variation and wasn't anymore, like right here where the sales rank kind of fell off the roof.
Yep.
But so yeah, just stuff to dive into. But this is just a good example of look how much opportunity is out there. These are products that at one point in time, a lot of these have potential. And if you can just get comfortable with it, you're going to have way less competition on these products. And Keepa Product Finder, that's a beast. So like you just start with the basics and play around with it.
Yep. Yeah, you can get more and more specific the more comfortable you get with it. But I mean, you saw on how many listings that Jonathan opened, it was all less than 10 sellers. I mean, it was pretty low seller counts, and some of those out of stock items like if you are the only one on the listing, you could easily list it at or above the current, last sold price. So
Oh
there's
yeah.
so much opportunity. I mean, we could dive into just that specific topic for hours if we wanted, but no, this is a great starting point.
Yep. Cool.
All good with that?
Yep.
All right. No questions. So I will go into my last product here. Let me just pull it up quick. All right. Good. All right. So, okay. So this is a pet supplies product. It's some filter for a fish tank. I think this was another lead that I was potentially going to purchase because it had a decent ROI. I think it was actually closer to like a 55% ROI. So just that's the context clues we'll have for this. 3 months, we actually see quite a bit of price fluctuation here. We see the low down here, this little anomaly here. I wouldn't really count this as the low. The consistent low is probably closer to this 1692. And then we do see it jump up once that offer count goes down enough. We see that that it goes up to 17.99. We see it as high as upwards of $20, and now we're kind of leveled out as the offer count goes back up again towards 18.79. So again, at this current price, we're sitting around a 55% ROI. I think the low here is a break even, or it's really low percentage, right? Because these 18, I mean, we're losing like a 20% here, going from almost 19 to almost 17. So big jump there. So the sales rank here, I'm noticing, I mean, it's a pretty slow mover. If you know pet supplies ranks, you basically want to be below like 30K, 40K to sell more than like 50 times a month, right? Like the 40K rank isn't horrible. It might only sell, 10 to 30 to 50 times a month maximum. Looks like we're kind of above that 40K range. We're averaging probably closer to the 50K mark. Recently we went down, but this just could be a dip. We see it go 40K, pretty consistently, but it jumps back up to 60. So, and then we see this offer count going up. This was kind of the biggest red flag for me because of the combination of the increased supply with such a low demand, right? It is a lot of this you're going to find is just supply versus demand. And maybe back here, the demand was, enough to where the amount of sellers and the amount of stock on the listing was enough for, the price to even go from here and go up from there. So that's like an interesting thing, right? You see, we're sitting at like 8 sellers, $19 price. Some seller got it all the way up at $20, right? They must have repriced it up, a couple cents here, but we went up, 2-3 sellers in that time frame. So, that's kind of telling you that the supply and demand is still in favor of the demand until we start to get up where we're at like 15 sellers, right? And then just understanding the rank, we know what the demand is based on the rank. And we see that offer count going up to a point where it's like, okay, there's 15 sellers. Well, let's go and look at the data to see how much stock these sellers have. And again, these are estimates, but FBA stocks are a little bit more accurate than FBM stocks, just from what we've seen in the past. And it looks like there is quite a bit of stock on this listing. Not a ton of sellers, right? But the stock is pretty high. Even though, maybe we don't fully trust like someone's got 200 in stock or 80 in stock, 90 in stock, just seems like a lot for a listing that doesn't sell super fast. So it doesn't quite make sense, from a seller's perspective, like why we would have so much stock on a listing that just doesn't sell all that often. This is telling us that we're at 130. Is this actually pet supplies? Maybe it's not pet supplies. It is pet supplies. Okay. So I'm like, maybe it sells faster than it does. I'm actually like, yeah. Why are we seeing so much sold? Okay. So the sold, then again, we see this as the sales rank is going to be the most accurate indicator of how often it sells, right? Sales rank comes directly from Amazon's numbers. Keepa's sold in the last 30 days is a Keepa estimate, right? So we need to look at the actual data versus the estimate and just compare the two. So if we see, oh, it says it sold 135 times a month, we should really be questioning, like, why is the rank, 50K or higher for most of the last 3 months when it's sold 135 times a month? That doesn't make sense. If we jungle scouted it, I've sold enough pet supplies where, you want to be below 40K to actually sell more than 50 times. So what's the data telling us here? So we see that the stock count here, this drop here looks like consistent sales. So it looks like the seller did sell a decent amount here, but we see like a big spike up to 10 all the way back down to 1. That's probably FC transfer or unrelated to actual sales. But in the last 30 days, that's going to count because it happened in the last 30 days. So it says, oh, we sold 10. This seller sold 10 there. Then it went back up. Then we had some maybe consistent sales. This seller here went from 18 down to 2. So it claims, Keepa claims that, we had, 16 sales in a matter of a day, not even, and then a couple of up and downs here. So 30 sales. So that's inaccurate. This is inaccurate. 19 went from, 20 down to 1. That's inaccurate. Okay. So maybe this 135 isn't as accurate as we thought. So again, we're just using that as context clues to say, okay, now we're getting more cons than pros here, based on, all the data that we've looked at. We can get a little bit more context with buy box statistics. We see it rotates a decent amount. One seller's got the most, but, and it's not the one thing that you like to see is like, is the person that gets the buy box share the most? Do they have a lot of stock or are they the lowest price, right? If one of those two things are true, then it kind of makes sense. Like, okay, they're getting the buy box share because they have they're priced competitively, they're cheap, or they have a lot in stock. So Amazon trusts that they can deliver, maybe they have a bunch of stock in all parts of the US, so they can deliver. So they're going to get the buy box more often. But if we see that, they're not the lowest price, which doesn't look like they are, and they don't have like 50, 100 in stock, right? Then it's a good sign that, okay, we can get the buy box share if we are just, price competitively, if we have a decent amount of stock, whatever the case is. So, and it's not a seller with, huge wholesale review counts either. So that this part of the analysis looks great for us, right? We're seeing it rotates a decent amount. It's not a specific seller that's getting that buy box share, and the review counts are all over the place. So that's a great sign for us. But, for me, the red flag is we see this increasing offer count. And then we see that low price of down here where we were break even before. Again, maybe it's worth the risk where you're like, okay, I could buy a couple of units, try to sell out, make 40% ROI, maybe, because right now we're sitting at a 55%. Maybe by the time it sells, we're sitting at 40%. By the time we sell out of our 5 units, we're at 30%. So, okay, that was a win. But with how much risk we have, we could be buying faster moving products, right? Could potentially be a break even. For me, it just wasn't quite worth it. So, and it's not like this is a huge product or anything. It'd be an easy prep item, but again, just not quite the product I'm looking for. So any comments? I was rambling quite a bit there, but
span it out for a year for me.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So like,
hey, no sales rank.
I like to basically what I'm looking at here is when's the last time that there was a timing when there was an increase the way that there is now. I mean, I guess around January of this year, but then all the way back to there, right? Yeah, and look what happens with the price there. It's an inverse of the seller count, which is very common, right? Yep. More sellers, more stock, price goes down. So unless you were like, I in general hate buying when I see an increase in the seller count the way that there is right now, because with Amazon, you're predicting the future a little bit. And so I don't have reason to believe that's going to fall off. So in my mind, based on this, price is only going to go down,
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So again, if it moved a little bit quicker and we were getting 55%, right, then maybe I would say, okay, maybe some of those stock counts give us a little bit more confidence in the product. There's just too much risk in my mind, too much risk involved, especially when we see stuff like this in the past. Like, that was a while ago, but we just know that when there is too much stock, because I mean, we can't go back and look at that information, but when there's 30 sellers in the listing, we saw right now there's a bunch of sellers with 20, 30, 50 in stock. Who's to say there wasn't that much here? And then all of a sudden there is actually like 500 units in stock when this product only sells 50 to 70 times a month. Now the stock completely outweighs, the supply completely outweighs the demand, which is why you see these plummets, because some sellers are saying, okay, I need to get out of this. It's not a good buy. I got to invest that money into something better. And then all of a sudden you see a bidding war to the bottom and we see that level out. close to $12, $13. That's probably what they were purchasing at, hoping to sell it at or lower, So anyway, I think we talked about this one enough, but yeah, it's not a, I mean, there's some good aspects to the chart, some positive aspects, some pros, but too many cons in my mind, too much risk.
I think in general, if you have to convince yourself to make a buy, it's probably not the right move. I think also like when you get excited about a buy, don't become married to it. Like the idea of it initially might not actually pan out when you really analyze it. And I find if you're ever really on the fence, like just wait a little bit. I think we've all been through it, but you're sourcing for hours and you have nothing to show for it, and it's like I'll just settle. But then come tomorrow, it's a good day, and it's like damn, I spent a couple $100 that I could have spent on this. Now I can't spend it on this, or just that you just like made a bad buy, and we've all been there, and you have to go through it. But like, you just got to take the emotion out of it for the most part.
Yeah, that's tough to do. I mean, it takes a lot of practice to like learn that, okay, I've seen this before. I mean, you just said it, like you'll buy it today and even like 3 days later, right, before it even shows up to your house so you can even prep it, the chart already looks worse than it did exactly what you expected, right? I've seen it where it's like the offer count's increasing, but the price hasn't dropped yet. But by the time your stuff checks in, the price drops, 20, 30%. So it's like,
right.
Well, shoot, I kind of predicted that, but I didn't listen to my, I too much emotion because I thought it was good at the moment, but it's not, that doesn't mean it's going to be good in 2-3 weeks when your stuff checks. And that's the hardest part is predicting.
And that's why it's important to weigh your worst case scenario. And if you don't know how to do that, a real simple way is like, what's the lowest this has ever sold for? Or more realistically, if you have a ballpark idea of how many sellers there are, link that up to another point in time. Like if there's 20 sellers today, when was the last time there was 20 sellers within recent time? And what has it sold for then? That's probably an accurate way too. And yeah, the more you do this and the more forced buys you make that don't pan out, the easier it becomes to not do it again and again. But you're going to do it. Like it's just human nature,
Yep. I think like 2 years ago, I was buying a lot of Nike because I didn't know what I was doing. And it was like getting to a point where it was starting to be saturation, but I would just buy it because based on the current status of that product and that listing, it looked great. And by the time stuff checked in, I'm like, holy crap, my repricer, I set it already to $30 and it's already at 20. Like what the heck? And that happened over and over again. And I didn't learn my lesson until I finally was like, man, I'm like, breaking even on so many of these products. Why is that happening? Well, I know what the chart looks like. It's telling me not to buy, but bought it anyway. And I mean, yeah, you see that stuff enough and eventually you learn from it. But hopefully after you guys watch some of this and understanding some of those things, you learn it sooner than later, because the sooner you can learn, what the chart looks like and how to kind of predict. I mean, you see the same chart over and over enough again, you can kind of predict what could happen. You're not going to predict, the exact percentage the price is going to drop, but if you are predicting a drop, or if you're predicting, right, the offer count is on the decline, but it's in stock on, a couple major websites now when it wasn't before, like you can kind of predict what's going to happen if you've seen that before. So it's just a lot of reps. I mean, we've been putting in reps for 3-4 years and it's got us to this point. So that's what we're going off of.
Yep. So
Stephanie, this has been very helpful. Thank you. I like watching each of your KPF videos, but watching you together live takes us to another level. Appreciate that. Yeah, I think this breakdown, we've been talking about doing this for a bit, and I think it's niche, but it's definitely helpful to kind of see our breakdown, because we've maybe posted some stuff like this online before, but it's good just to see the real-time breakdown, because there's so many different charts, and we could break down 50 different charts and none of them would look the same. I mean, there's just so many different variations and combinations of charts out there. So, hopefully this was a good starting point for you guys. And maybe we'll do another one in a month or something if you guys want it. So definitely let us know if you like these types of lives. Otherwise, the Q&A style works great for us too. If you guys have any last minute questions, though, drop them down below. Otherwise, we're creeping up on that hour point, and we'll wrap it up here soon. Oh, so how much time do you spend? How much time would you say you spend like in the no sales ranks category, is that a big chunk of your time spent, or do you find like you only look certain times because it's not?
Yeah. So what I find is that so I do a lot of like vitamins and supplements and stuff, and I've been getting into like these niche brands that aren't the mainstream ones. And I find that when there's smoke, there's fire. So like I come across one, I have success with it, no sales rank. Then I'll do a no sales rank for that brand specifically. And then I just come to find that like for it's not uncommon for whatever reason, if one item has no sales rank, a lot in that brand also have no sales rank. So that's when I find myself diving into it. Um, but it's a regular part of my rotation. Like if I ever come across a new brand or there's a site sale going on for a specific brand, I'll run no sales rank, I'll run out of stock, I'll run things I've already sold. So like I don't have a number to give, but it is a steady part of my game because I think it is a huge competitive advantage because so many people I think just steer clear of it.
Yep, yep. You know what? I think that was a great little rant there. Let's end on that. We got
Yep.
some no more questions in the chat. Abra, thanks for sharing. Charles, thanks for sharing your thoughts on KPF. Appreciate you. And thanks for everyone who stuck along all the way through on this. I know we had some real deep dive on Keepa and Keepa charts, but you know, I feel like there's just not enough content out there with that type of stuff, and it's not an every week type of content that we'll see. But you know, I'm glad we were able to break some stuff down for you guys. So let us know if you have any questions on what we talked about. Right, drop a comment here. We'll probably answer it very soon. Let us know if you have any new topics you want us to talk about on these lives. We're always looking for new stuff to chat about. Otherwise, follow us on social media, and we'll see you guys next week, same time.
See you guys.